Words That Work by Frank Luntz. In this book, communications expert Frank Luntz advises readers on the best language to use when talking to an audience. He writes with business people and politicians in mind, professionals hoping to reach a large and general audience. He argues that by changing how we speak, we can better carry our ideas to more people, and simple language is the key to getting our message across. Understand that what you say and what people hear is different. Tailor your language to what your audience hears. Have you ever been in a situation where you meant to say one thing, but your conversation partner heard something completely different? Luntz explains that every single person has a slightly different understanding of words. In order to communicate effectively, we have to understand how people hear things. For example, welfare and assisting the poor mean virtually the same thing, but Americans hear totally different phrases. 23% say the country needs more welfare, while 68% say the country needs to help the poor. This is because people picture two separate things when hearing this difference in language. The first evokes images of laziness and welfare queens, while the second conjures a picture of kindness and charity. When we speak, we should consider our audience's worldview and how words filter through them. One way to do this, Luntz writes, is to take a cue from George Orwell and allow the audience to leave room for the imagination. In 1984, he wrote of Room 101, a place where each person is confronted with their fears. By leaving it up to the reader to imagine their own personal fears, Room 101 was clearly communicated as a room of terror. The best communicators use short words and brief sentences. Think of the last time you picked up a dictionary to check the meaning of a word. Luntz writes that it is rare for people to look up words these days, so communicating using words that the average person does not know will misfire. If you speak to broad audiences, understand that most people have not graduated from college and spend most of their days at practical jobs. A majority of people do not have time to grow their vocabulary. To keep people more engaged, use the simplest language possible. Using obscure words will only make people resent you. Luntz gives the example of Apple's branding change. When they switched their product's name from Macintosh to Mac, its popularity jumped. Be mindful of your sentences, too. Short sentences are as important as simple words. Luntz recommends reducing your message to the shortest phrase possible and using active verbs. For example, Dwight D. Eisenhower made his campaign slogan, "I like Ike," after his nickname. The phrase made him more accessible as a candidate, and the phrase caught like wildfire. Luntz also believes that complicated language cost John Kerry the election in 2004. Kerry used obscure words and said things like progressive internationalism and myopic unilateralism. Most people watching his speeches had no idea what he was talking about. Make sure to stay up to date on evolving language and slang. New technological developments have created new vocabularies in young people, and popular usage will always override dictionary definitions. Repeat your messages, but keep it surprising. When you're addressing an audience, you want to avoid two things: boring them and overwhelming them with new information. It's important to find a balance between staying consistent and fresh. Luntz recommends identifying the most important part of your message. Instead of adding new information to your list, practice repeating yourself instead. This takes discipline, but there are oftentimes people listening who haven't heard your most important points. Luntz points to the effect of repetition on brand slogans. Can you remember Coca-Cola's slogan? Because they change their slogan every few years, it's very difficult to recall. Wheaties cereal, however, hasn't changed theirs in years. Breakfast of Champions seems like a much more reliable tagline. To keep repetition from getting stale, make sure to keep old ideas fresh. Think of ways to repackage your idea into something entertaining or amusing. Consider how rethinking another slogan changed Volkswagen. In the era of big, hulking cars, Volkswagen found themselves falling behind. They noticed this trend was contrary to their principles and coined the slogan, "Think Small." This marketing trick made the brand relevant again. To get people to trust your words, remain credible. Credibility and authenticity are as important as ideology. People will not believe what they say if they cannot trust you to stick to your word. Luntz emphasizes how important it is to only say what you mean and to believe what you say. It is crucial to be authentic. If you say one thing and do another, people will quickly turn away. To start, make sure your words don't contradict common knowledge. For example, Al Gore lost a lot of credibility when he claimed he invented the Internet. Another gaffe happened in the 1992 presidential election. George Bush Sr. famously said, "Message, I care," misreading a note on the teleprompter. Even worse, his politics themselves didn't communicate that he was caring. Bill Clinton, his opponent, said he would put people first and provide them health care and quality education. Clinton went on to win the election. Authenticity is also why politicians like Mayor Rudy Giuliani and Arnold Schwarzenegger won seats in public office. The public saw their authenticity and elevated what they saw in their messages in response. Therefore, to win the public's trust, always be authentic. Don't let what other people say about you define you. When your image gets attacked, answer quickly, decisively, and honestly. People see silence as weakness and an admission of guilt. Give context to explain to people why your message matters. When talking to people, it's important to be on the same page as them. You can do this by putting your message in context. How? Outline to your audience why the message matters. How can they relate? What parts of their lives does it touch? To find out what context is necessary, come to understand your audience. Note what they value, and then find where your core message relates. A CEO shouldn't give the same speech to other executives and their general audience. In politics, if you're offering a solution, you should communicate where there's a problem. For example, in 1920, Warren G. Harding was running for president. He explained to Americans how the post-World War II political climate was chaotic and disorienting. He then offered his Back to Normalcy campaign. Words should have sound and texture. Make your message vivid by appealing to the senses. Luntz emphasizes the power of paying attention to the sensory quality of your language. You want your audience to literally get a feeling for the power of your message. Do this by paying attention to the sound of your words, the images they conjure, and the feelings they evoke. First, the musical quality of language plays a role. Think of some satisfying phrases. Luntz uses the example of "Snap, Crackle, Pop," the memorable slogan for Rice Krispies cereal. The slogan is so powerful because it gives a sense of what it feels and sounds like to eat the cereal. Also, consider the slogan for M&M's, "Melts in your mouth." The similar sounding words make it a memorable phrase. Luntz recommends considering rhyme, rhythm, and grammar when constructing messaging. Next, make your message easy to picture. Effective communication helps people imagine exactly what you mean. Consider using literal pictures to punctuate your points in a presentation, or vivid language in a speech. Luntz even recommends using the word imagine to give people a chance to make their own picture that draws on their personal desires and fears. Luntz attributes the popularity of John Lennon's song Imagine to this phenomenon. Appeal to people's emotions. People will forget what you say, but not how you made them feel. The best writers know that effective words are those that make their readers emotional. When language changes a person's feelings, it leaves a long-lasting impression on their memory. Luntz recommends appealing to emotions by finding words that evoke a universal human reality, humanization, or better yet, relating to individual people's life experience, personalization. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. mastered this in his I Have a Dream speech, where he made his vision for the future universal to each person listening by saying that people shouldn't be judged for their appearance, but by their character. Advertisers use this strategy all of the time. They attempt to demonstrate that their product will make average human life better by appealing to the problems we all have. For example, Olay uses the slogan, "Love the skin you're in," claiming to assist in the human struggle with self-esteem. Another way to personalize your message is by asking questions. This way, people can come to their own conclusions regarding your message. Luntz uses Ronald Reagan's performance in a 1980 presidential debate as an example. Reagan asked the audience, "Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago?" Many people in the audience realized they didn't like what happened in their country over those years. Reagan went on to win the election. Learn the 10 myths about Americans and make sure to avoid them. Learn your listeners' values instead. By becoming aware of what the lives of average Americans look like and what they're not, you get a better sense of how to fit your language to them. At the time of publication, the average American was a busy member of an aging population with a long commute. They have little money saved. Despite shifts in America's ethnic makeup, the average American is still white. In the popular discourse, there are many myths about Americans that are easy to adopt but are oversimplifications of how Americans live. Luntz gives 10 examples and cautions to communicators to avoid believing them. The first myth is that Americans are educated. Less than half of the population has graduated from college, and many Americans know little about their history and government. The second myth is that Americans read. Fewer than half of American households receive a daily newspaper, and only a third read the paper at least once a week. Magazine and book readership is steadily dropping. The only place where reading has increased is on the internet. People write and read blogs and emails, and writers in this context may struggle to adapt in other contexts. The third myth is that men and women respond to politics in the same way. Rather, men tend to have the same political opinions throughout their lives, while women evolve as their circumstances change. Their age, income, and education determine their politics more. The fourth myth is that Americans can be grouped into urban, rural, and suburban. Luntz writes that people often ignore the exurbia, or those that move beyond the suburbs into homogeneous Republican-planned communities that blend rural and small-town living. The fifth myth is that Americans like patriotic messaging. Although many Americans are patriotic, they tend to dislike explicitly patriotic speeches. These speeches can seem manipulative, overdone, and war-hawkish. The sixth myth is that Americans like messaging that appeals to the past. Americans actually prefer a worldview that is new and fresh. Instead of trying to go retro, try repackaging old ideas as future trends. The seventh myth is that a candidate's strong opinions matter. Only a handful of Americans pay attention to a candidate's positions. What really matters to Americans is a candidate's personality, image, authenticity, and their vibe. The eighth myth is that Americans are happy. Many Americans turn to non-establishment figures because they're tired of seeing the establishment fail them. They don't care where their solutions come from, as long as it makes them feel better. The ninth myth is that Americans like big businesses. Although people may want to own corporations in their dreams, they do not trust them in their daily lives. Businesses should understand this and present a human face rather than an overwhelmingly large corporate presence. The 10th myth is that Americans have put 9/11 behind them. Luntz believes that Americans will never get over the terrorist attack. He believes that the attack ruined America's sense of safety and scarred the public's conscience. After you've understood these myths, start to appeal to Americans' real values. Americans hold several principles close to them. First, they believe that in America, they have a chance at the American dream. Second, people believe in community. Americans regularly join clubs and organizations. Third, Americans prefer common sense to intellectualism. People like ideas that sound reasonable to them. Fourth, Americans want their governments to provide value, work efficiently, and protect their communities and families. In political messaging, make sure to tie your message to the future. Luntz believes that Bill Clinton beat Bob Dole in the presidential election because Clinton spoke of building a bridge to the 21st century. This optimism inspired Americans. Change your branding to be approachable and to give a better sense of your truth. In this section, Luntz turns to business people and offers them advice on business communications. He writes that businesses should be blunt and clear in order to truly connect with their customers and workers. Communications should be personalized and crafted to be universally appealing. Luntz recommends coming up with a catchy advertising slogan to help create a consistent brand. What does your brand stand for? You want the slogan to be an embodiment of the brand's living truth. Choose something hopeful and easy to imagine. Luntz says that relatable branding can totally change your role in an industry. For example, casinos became much more popular after changing the words gambling to gaming in their advertising. Luntz extends this analysis to the names of certain phenomena in American politics. By changing a name, you change how things are seen. If the estate tax was changed to death tax, less people would consider it fair. If drilling for oil was changed to exploring for energy, the oil industry would be recast in a new light. If people went vacationing to American locations rather than domestic ones, more people could see the value of vacationing in their country. This changing of names is effective because it switches phrases with negative associations into phrases with positive or more useful associations. The main takeaway. To reach general audiences, it's important to understand the American public. People prefer simple language, short sentences, and credibility from the speaker. Make sure you're maintaining authenticity by acting on the things you claim. It is also important to stay consistent and repeat your most important points with discipline. Try to offer something new despite the repetition by repackaging the message in novel ways. Pay attention to the sound and texture of your words. You want to build up a strong image in the mind of the listener and speak aspirationally. How do they imagine a good experience? Trigger emotions and understanding. Finally, make sure to give context so the listener can understand how your message is relevant.
Hi, I'm Rhonda, and this is an exclusive audiobook video recorded for the Audiobook Master Channel. Enjoy your audiobook and have fun learning. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button so you'll get updated on our next upload. If you liked the video, give us a thumbs up and say your thoughts about the book we just covered. Do you want to listen to a summary or review of a book that we haven't covered in the past? Say it in the comments below or send us a message. Don't forget to check our other uploads. Enjoy listening!